I think if you spend 50% of your time looking for the best product and then don't screw it up, you're better off.
The chef in the hunt for the best there is to put on the table in the Pacific Northwest.
They're trying to wedge themselves into the tightest spot to hang on as well as they can and then still be able to feed optimally.
And the farmer whose crops are grown not on 40 acres, but 40 rafts, cultivating mussels. The farmer and the chef and the farmer, partners in passion for fresh, clean, wholesome food.
I don't know that I've ever had one raw. What do you think?
I think you ought to give it a try and let me know.
I'll just take the juice.
This is a program about passion, the passion of two men of the American Northwest to produce and serve nourishing, satisfying foods. Tom Douglas presides at the Palace Kitchen in Seattle. Etta's, which is named for his daughter, and the Dahlia Lounge.
I kind of go through taste memory. When I eat out at restaurants, I kind of recreate the dish in my head, how it was made. And so the next day, I go to the store and I'm thinking, you know, I know that had this in it or that in it, and that's how I've learned how to cook.
He is big and round and jolly, and happiest when he has his hands and his mind on the food. Tom Douglas had been building houses, had been working on the railroad, before he learned to love the whole process of finding and cooking and serving.
Hey, Tom, you can see how this raft is all settled down in the water there?
Ian Jeffords is part of a whole family with passion. Ian was barely a sprout when the Jeffords lashed together rafts such as these and floated them in Penn Cove off Puget Sound to cultivate that staple of the ancients, the mussel.
When you see somebody at the table sitting next to you order your product,
yeah, it's pretty
you sit over there and smile a little bit, you know, it's kind of special.
Jeffords' floating farm is just a ferry ride from the Seattle restaurants that Tom Douglas and his wife operate.
You must cook mussels every night of the week.
No,
is that true?
Not anymore.
No? You used to, though.
We used to eat a lot of them. We didn't have a lot else to eat. So,
well, times were tough when you were getting started.
Times were tough. You know, when we started, people didn't know what mussels were. We started in 1975, and the first mussels that we took into the market, I'm not kidding you, we took them in buckets, and people thought we were selling bait.
That's probably was me, too.
No, it wasn't you. And so it's like, what do you mean bait? This is like the best seafood that you can possibly buy. And slowly but surely, you know, things have kind of built up.
Well, Penn Cove mussels have the same cachet now, and lots of foods have gone that direction.
Penn Cove mussels have, and so have many of the oysters that we sell. You know, we distribute different oysters and clams as well. And we now carry 30 varieties of oysters.
Right. Well, it's interesting that most of those oysters, for example, are all the same seed. The shell variation and the thickness of the shell and everything is really only got to do with the water that they're in.
I'm going to try and show you everything from start to finish. Let me grab a boat here. I'm going to pull you up. All right, Tom, the reason we wanted to bring you out to this raft is it's a classic example of one of the reasons why we came to Penn Cove in the first place. In the springtime, generally by the middle of April, what we've done is we've come out here and we've hung 20 to 30,000 different collector lines. And we call them collector lines because we're trying to collect...
20 to 30,000?
20 to 30,000.
How many rafts does that entail?
We have 41 rafts here, and part of those we'll use for harvestable crop, part that we'll use for seed crop. Generally by the first week of June, we'll come out and we'll pull these collector lines up, and they'll look like they're covered with little pepper flakes. And they're kind of hard to see at that time because these lines that we're putting down are black. But later on, like now, here we are in the middle of July, and we've come back out and we've gone to all these lines and we've opened them up so that the lines don't all stick together. And now you can see the mussels have grown a little bit.
Still tiny.
They're still tiny.
Like fingernail, would you call that fingernail?
That's fingernail size. But look how many there are. And here these lines are, and they're just loaded with baby mussels. Now, one of the things that we have to do, you can see how thick they are on here, and this gets back to that analogy I was talking about earlier, where where you have to thin things out. Just like any other farm situation, we have to thin these out.
Just like radishes, just like green beans.
Exactly.
Whatever.
And so when we go to take them off the line, we can literally just strip them right off, and it's not hurting the mussels at all. All it's doing is breaking the connection of their byssal thread and the material that they're on.
And that's the beard, right?
And that's the beard,
yeah.
right.
If you've seen one mussel, you've seen them all, right? Not quite.
I wanted to show you what the seed looks like as it's grown out a little bit. Here's some seed that's a little bit further along.
Oh yeah, now that's where you definitely, these are ready to go over to the thinner, huh?
These need to be thin because if I leave them like this, you can see how they get these big balls like this, and they'll basically fall off of here, and they get loose. The more they grow, the further they are away from the center of the line that they're hanging on to, the more likely they are to fall off. What we'll do here is move on and take you over to the seeding barge where they're taking lines like this, stripping the seed off, and then putting it into the socks where once they've done that, that's it. Going to the final process before harvest.
Then we can cook them.
We can cook them.
Cool.
All right.
Yes, it's all in that sock, a Jeffords family development, one that gives the mussels room to grow and take their place amid the abundance of Puget Sound, all the creatures of the water and the air.
I see a lot of birds out here. I see a lot of fish out there. What's going on sustainability-wise? I know you're taking just the natural seed from the bay. We are feeding on natural planktons and things like that. But I see all this wildlife around the mussels.
Well, that wasn't the original intent, but that certainly is a side product of it. We're providing roosting places for birds. We have seals. See the seals sitting on the raft over there? These rafts are basically an artificial reef, but instead of coming from the bottom, they're hanging from the top.
The farmer who rides a small boat instead of a large tractor may get wet a lot, but he also gets to harvest on order.
Oh, these look like good size.
But one of the reasons we brought you over here, Tom, is we wanted to show you what they look like after they've kind of started poking through the mussel sock. You can see here's the mussel sock in the middle, and then they keep coming up.
Oh, baby.
And then they start getting some weight to them.
And these are just anemones? What are those?
These are anemones. They've
yeah.
curled back in on themselves. And so the mussels have grown through, and these aren't quite ready to harvest. They're getting there.
So if you were to just pop these, I mean...
I'll give you a knife.
I don't know. Do I need a knife, or am I tough enough to...
Well, I don't know.
No, I need a knife.
Let me see.
And one of the things that I've always loved about Penn Cove mussels is that the shell's a little bit thin, but the mussel is really, really meaty and delicious. You get a lot of meat for the amount of weight of the shell, you know, and these are sold by the pound, obviously. And
so what do you want to buy? You want to buy meat or shell?
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
I'd ask. You know, Penn Cove mussels grow in about a year's time to harvest size. The rest of the mussel industry harvests them in about 2 years' time. And the reason they grow so fast here is within the Puget Sound, there's a whole bunch of rivers coming out of the mountains dumping water in here. And we have 2/3 of the fresh water that come into the Puget Sound come from 2 river systems right over to the east of us over here, the Skagit and Stillaguamish. And they bring in all these nutrients. And so you can see the food in the water here, and it's just really thick. And so with all that food, they're growing real fast, and you know, we end up with this real sweet mussel as a result of it.
yeah, and just a simple steam, just warm them up basically, you know, and put them on the half shell, and then right when we were ready, we popped them on the charcoal grill and finished them off.
Tasty.
They were really sweet and really delicious. Why don't people eat more of these on the half shell?
Well, I guess it's all taste. You know, to me, mussels, before they cook, they tend to be a little bit bitter, and I think the cooking converts some of those sugars over to a more palatable flavor. Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever had one raw, dude. What do you think?
I think you ought to give it a try and let me know what
I'll
you
just
think.
take the juice. You know, like any good seafood, it tastes like the sea, you know, and I think it's fabulous.
Well, whether it's the nutrients here, or whether because they grow so fast, you know, they do have a very sweet flavor. You know, this is the local mussel. It's indigenous here. Just must be something special about the water.
A lot of your mussels come to bearded already, right?
We debeard them all,
So,
unless they ask for them otherwise. All right, come on up here. I'm going to show you how they harvest all these. So this is Mike Fisher. He runs the whole front end of the boat. And they come out to wherever Tim sends them, where they're going to harvest that day. And then Mike will come out here. They'll tie up to the barge where the mussels are ready to go. And he's babying them on this conveyor because they're kind of big and loose on the line. You see, this doesn't have the disc on it to hold it on, so they're loose on here, and he doesn't want to lose them now that they're all ready to go. And they'll come up on the conveyor, they'll come into this hopper and get stripped off of the line, and then up into the harvesting machinery, which washes them and separates them, down onto the debissing machine, which takes the beards off of them. Then they go into the culling house where any cracked or broken ones are pulled aside, then into the bag they go and off to market.
Very cool.
And we only harvest what we have orders for.
Whenever you see someone doing precisely what he loves and loves what he's doing, well, the world is just about all right, isn't it?
You're what, up to 3 restaurants?
I've grown, yeah.
Well, me too. But you're up to 3 restaurants in town now.
It's a great business. For my restaurant, you look out into this unbelievable bay, this Puget Sound, and it's just it's a fabulous place to be. I felt like I was in the right place at the right time.
They are proud people out here in the upper left-hand corner of the American map. Seattle with its wealth of nature, the rain that cleanses, the rich soils of the interior, the Sound, Puget Sound, bursting with marine life. Much of it here and here only, nowhere else.
One of the great things about going off to those farms like that, you know, whether it's for cauliflower or whether it's for mussels, is kind of like through osmosis, you pick up that passion and just the heartfelt. I mean, Ian, he's just like so into what he's doing from top to bottom and so proud of his operation, his employees, the whole thing. I love that about visiting the farm. I've got these gorgeous mussels that all I got to do is go into my bag and pull them out. You can see that there are no strings attached, no barnacles attached. They're just absolutely perfect. So I always keep them iced down, even when I'm working with them. You know, even though you're going to cook them in a few minutes, I always keep them iced down. I'm going to make kind of a little classic chowder with a little twist with saffron and use mussels instead of clams. I have a lot of veggies here from the farm. We have great organic farmers everywhere around the Sound. This is a celery root. You can see it's kind of funky. This is what it's going to look like when I get done with it. I'm just going to cut the rough edges off. And people are scared of this because it looks so gnarly, but basically it's really easy to use and it's very flavorful. It makes a great slaw, things like that. Celery root is very creamy in that it has some of that celeriac flavor. But it's more like a turnip or a potato, but with a little celery flavor. So I'm going to start with my bacon. Probably as in every town in America, in Seattle we have immigrants from all over the place. This bacon is done from a German butcher down in the Pike Place Market. I just love what ethnicity brings to the table. You know, you get the best of all worlds. As an American chef, I could never work in Italy. I could never be a chef in Italy. I mean, over there, everyone has to cook the same thing over and over and over again. It's beautiful, it's delicious, but it would make me crazy. And in America, we have that odd capability of being able to borrow from a million cuisines. So this is a quick chowder. You know, you always see the big chowders, lots of the large vegetables and things like that. I like to dice them real small. And what I get out of that is all you have to do is saute them and they're done. And so you don't have it sitting on the stove cooking away all the natural flavors for hours and hours at a time. So I'm going to add my onion, my celery root, and my diced carrots. I'm going to add a little butter to help brown those in. I'm going to add my mushrooms. These are oyster mushrooms. Beautiful oyster mushroom farmers in the area. This is a farm variety of oyster mushroom. And I'm just going to add those in here. And I'm going to add a little pinch of saffron. You can see I have this. It only takes about, we're only making chowder for 2, so it only takes about a couple of little stems. One of the beauties of living in the Northwest, I don't know how many people realize it, but we're the second largest wine producing state in the country. So Washington wine, I mean, we grow fabulous Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, we're terrific with Cabernet, just south in Oregon, the fabulous Pinot Noir. But it's just an amazing industry at this point, and I love promoting it. It's great fun. The wines are fabulous. We're going to deglaze the pan with a little Chardonnay. And then I've got a little salt, a little pepper. You don't want too much salt or else your mussels are going to make you too salty. And then add our cream. And now is a good time to add the mussels. All the vegetables are cooked. If you're cooking at home now, you know, you always check for, always check to make sure they're not open. These are just solid, tight. A good mussel is a heavy mussel. It feels heavy for the size that it is. As I showed you out at the beach, these mussels, the shells are thin, the meat is really full, and that's where that heavy flavor comes from. I'm going to take some lemon zest. You know, everyone's looking for ways not to use as much salt, it seems like. Well, I always love to use lemon zest. And that perks flavor just like salt and pepper would. So I've got my chopped arugula, or any sort of little salad green would be good in this. Stir it at the last second. Put a lid on this for a minute. And as soon as those mussels pop, that's when you know that your chowder's ready. Okay, so our mussels are open. I'm just going to stir in this little thing. Let me add the rest of my greens to this, but those greens will wilt in a second. And then just wilt your greens. You want them to be really fresh and green still. Don't cook the color out of them. And then there's some nice grilled bread here. And there's our mussel chowder. So I'm going to make another dish, just a simple steamed mussel dish. Again, using the Penn Cove mussels. As I said before, you know, the influence from Asia here is unbelievable. I'm going to make a little ginger butter for the mussels. I'm going to grab our mussels out of here again. One of the great things about having the mussel farm 30 minutes from Seattle is that they keep them live. I mean, the bags sit in salt water, aerated salt water, until you're ready to use them. So it's a beautiful thing. First, we're going to use just some whole butter. And this probably is, you know, maybe would feed 4. You know, just picking at it for an appetizer. And my ginger. I'm going to kind of infuse the ginger with the butter there. And I've got these ripe jalapenos. I like to cut them big enough so that people can see them, because not everyone can handle them. I love the essence that they bring. And then I've taken a lime and I've peeled the zest off. It's the best part of all the citrus fruits is the zest, whether orange, grapefruit, lime. And I simply chop it up. The key is you don't let the white get into. You can see on the lemon, you didn't get into the pith, and we want to do the same with the lime. Sauce for the mussels is going to happen with the mussel juice, and I use a lot of sake in my cooking. You know, it's fermented rice wine basically, and I love the aromatic that it gives. It just adds a little essence, it's just different, I guess. So we're going to add some sake to this. Now, traditionally, I would go ahead and throw these mussels in, but I got a trick up my sleeve. I've got a good charcoal fire going, so I'm going to roast these on the wood fire for a second. That'll give a little char, a little smoke flavor, add just another little element to our dish. Just throw them right on the grill. And if you ever used a hot wok before, this is kind of the same idea. Just do a couple. Throw them on the barbecue, yeah. They don't fall through, obviously they're big enough. I'm gonna come right over here with that. And just when they start to open, you don't want to overcook them on the grill, but just when they start to open is when you want to pop them right in your butter. Put them right back on, and then we're gonna add a lid again, maybe for just another minute. The other thing about mussels is they cool off really quickly after you've cooked them. So I take any sort of metal thing, you could serve it right in the pan, but I use a little sizzle plate, and I'll heat that up right next door to it. And that way when it goes out to the table, that plate will keep things warm throughout the appetizer. Sustainable heat, I think they call it. All right. You can see that it's still a little bit translucent, and it's still soft to the touch, but it's cooked. Okay, we'll take our sizzle plate over. Now you don't want that too hot. Or I didn't salt, excuse me. Didn't salt those because they're already salty from the seawater. But you can see that goes right on the sizzle plate. You don't have to get that super hot. And then freshen with a little squeeze of lime. And then I like to put maybe sesame breadsticks on there, something to soak up all that juice. Now we have two really fast, really fresh mussel dishes within 30 minutes of Seattle. I approach cooking really simply. You know, I'm a straight up kind of guy. I don't need a lot of fancy French food or a lot of fancy training. I love people who have a passion for food. I live to eat. I don't eat to live. Well, from a cooking perspective, I would say the first thing you have to do in order to have good food, you have to support the farmers. So not only should you give thanks to them every night at your table, but you should go out and support them. And that means taking the effort to go to a farmer's market. And what you get a connection to the farm. You get an inspiration. You get a passion that you can just, like I said, through osmosis. You just get that an energy about the food that you're eating.
The skyline tucked into the Cascade Mountain chain. The water, the harbor that opens to the vast Pacific. The abundance of fresh, organic food for the Seattle chef to reach for. It's all right there. America's Northwest masterpiece.